More bad news for Donald Trump's social media platform that, as of yet, has still not gotten off the ground. But the group that acquired Donald Trump's company, Digital World Acquisition Group, is now actually being sued by a former investor who alleges that he was improperly kicked out of the group and therefore the group is fraudulent. He's alleging this fraud took place because they, I guess, didn't want to give him the money. And he is suing to either get financial compensation or, in fact, to be allowed to come back in as an investor, buying up the amount of shares he would have otherwise been entitled to at 3 cents per share. So that's a big problem. When one of your former investors, who you, according to him, improperly kicked out of the group, says that this group is riddled with fraud, probably a big red flag for investigators who, again, are already looking into the deal. And that is just the tip of the iceberg, by the way, on all of the news we have gotten about Donald Trump's little group, this special purpose acquisition group is what they're called, SPACs. There was more bad news that came out earlier last week that obviously flew a little bit underneath the radar because of all of the news about text messages and, treason and sedition from Republicans in the House of Representatives. But that news came from investors in Wall Street, not investors in the company, but who have been scrutinizing this deal and saying that it's murky, that it doesn't smell right, and that they've literally never seen anything like this. And they say they probably will never see anything like this again, because the company was valued at a little under $11 billion last week, in spite of all the red flags, in spite of the SEC investigation into the company, which is most likely a formality, but with these new fraud charges coming from one of the investors, it could easily take off into a very serious investigation. Because in the court filing itself, this former investor, a man by the name of Brian Chevlin, alleges that Donald Trump and the CEO of Digital World Acquisition Group, the group that acquired Trump's social media company, they'd been talking about this for months. That this was an ongoing plan, and that would be, folks, the fraud that the guy's talking about. Because what is supposed to happen with these SPAC groups, and again, I hate all of these stupid little acronyms that they have on Wall Street, but anyway, what's supposed to happen is you gather up all your investors, everybody puts their money into a central location, and at that point, once all the money is in, then you decide where to invest it. And if it turns out the CEO of Digital World Acquisition was in fact in talks with Donald Trump long before the money came into the pot, that absolutely would be fraud. And that absolutely would be prosecutable, likely for both parties, which would be Donald Trump and the CEO of Digital World, Patrick Orlando. So both parties could face some kind of criminal liability if what Mr. Chevlin is alleging in his lawsuit is actually true. So at this point, it is probably worth the SEC's effort to continue their investigation and find out what happened. They also clearly need to go ahead and speak with Mr. Chevlin himself, see if he has any evidence to back up his claims that Orlando and Trump were in fact in talks prior to the purchase being made. There's a lot of unknowns here, but the more we're finding out about it, the more this venture does start to look, at least on the surface, totally fraudulent. A get-rich-quick scheme by a bunch of Wall Street investors and Donald Trump himself, where they get to bring in all the money, they get to take home all the profits, they end up fleecing the average investors who bought into this once they all sell and, leave them with stock that is effectively worthless. And even other investors on Wall Street, as I mentioned, are looking at this and saying, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. So for investors to even look at something and say, yeah, this smells fishy, probably a good sign that the SEC is doing a good thing by going ahead and preliminarily looking into them to make sure there's no wrongdoing. And again, if Chevlin's accusations, if he can actually back them up, I wouldn't be surprised if criminal charges might be coming down the pipeline in the months ahead.